Okay, in this video, I'm going to show you how you can take your painterly exercise and go ahead and build it into a video clip component. So one of the easiest ways to deal with this and get really good organization, I mean, you don't have to do this, but I find that that makes it a lot easier, is if you go through your document, if you haven't already done so, and just look to see what stages kind of look good and in phases. So for instance, what I did was this is my starting, and you'll notice here that I actually have already gone through to see, and I've numbered them to make the video go a little bit faster. But I did take the time to go and look and sort of go backwards and see, all right, well, these two things may be shown up together, sort of look like a good next phase, and then this third one added on is a significant change, and then, you know, adding a little bit more. And so we can keep going through like that. And what I think is a good thing to do so that you don't have to worry about, you know, sometimes missing stuff is you can use the layer comps to build instances of what's visible, and it also will keep track of positioning and things like that. So the first layer comp that I have is this one, and I've already built it. Basically, all you have to do when you get the visibility and the situation the way you want it, you just click this new page icon and it'll create a new comp, and you can label it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn on my next ones, and we'll hit the layer comp, and I'll call this 02, and I'm going to call it riverbed bottom set, okay, because it's going to be the bottom set. All right, and then the next one I can do here is go and turn that one on. I hit this and say 03. Okay, now I'm not going to make you watch me do all of these. You get the idea. Okay, so but I want to show you really quickly. Now if I just click that, it automatically remembers the state that I recorded that in. Okay, so you can see how valuable this would be. And what's really cool is you can also take this and you can export out your comps into either a PDF or JPEGs or other PSDs. It's a really very powerful tool. Okay, now before I go too much further, there's something that I think that's pretty important to talk about before I, you know, make all these comps, and that is, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these just for consistency's sake, because I haven't gotten very far. And it doesn't do anything whenever you delete those comps. It doesn't do anything over here. What I want to do though is I want to go ahead and color code the ones that belong together, and then I actually want to put them in folders. And I guess I could put them in folders before I color code. So first of all, I'm going to look at, we've got our number 2s down here. I'm going to go ahead and group them. I'm going to go ahead and maintain that numbering system, the 02 numbering system. And what I can also do is, let's say that I want the very first thing to be gray. Maybe riverbed bottom can be blue. And then this one, because it's separate, I'm actually just not going to put it in a folder, but I will go ahead and give it a color. And I'll make that one violet, I guess. And then I've got the number 4, and I think it's all by itself too. In fact, I don't have to give colors to the ones that are only one at a time, because I might run out of colors. So anyway, there's 4, there's 5, and then it looks like 6 jumps up here. Okay, and then 7 is here, and there are a bunch of 7s. So now I can't put the 7s in a folder together because I can put these two in a folder, but I can't put this one in a folder. And the reason being is that there's a whole bunch of stuff that's in between, and you know, because of the filtering effects and so forth, I really can't change the ordering. So what I'll do is I will color code them. I will put these two though in a folder. It's going to make it a lot easier. You'll see in a little bit in a video view. So we'll say 07 rooftop, and we're going to make this We'll make it red since it's got a picture of fire in it. Okay. And we'll make that red so its descendants will also be red. And then number 8 has multiples, so we can put those two, since they're next to each other, we can put those in a group. Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to label it. And we'll make that, I guess, orange. And then number 9, we've got 3 number 9s. Those can all go in a folder because they are next to each other. So we'll say 0, 9, and we'll call this water and cracks. Okay. And then we're pretty good, I think. And then if I give this a color, we can make that, I guess, yellow. And we can make these other ones. Maybe if we wanted to, all the ones that are single and by themselves, we could give them some other color. It really doesn't matter. But what's really important is the ones that are grouped are colored. And I think that that's what's really going to make a big difference. Okay. In fact, you know what? I should go ahead. I went ahead and took the color off of this just to be consistent so that we don't have some. And then also there's another 8 right here. I missed that one. So let's make that orange. And then that way, see, because they're separate, we won't get confused and leave orphans around. Okay. Something that is important though, in terms of what we're trying to do, is that we need to go ahead in these subgroups and turn all the visibility on, so that way we can just turn it off like this. If we don't do that, then the visibility right here, like for instance this, it doesn't turn anything on and off. All right, so you have to make sure that it's on before you can toggle it on and off in the master, basically like a master switch. Okay, so and then we've got one more down here. We'll do that. And that's it for the groups. And there's one other thing that I want to mention to you, and it's kind of important. The thing that most of us are going to be doing, or most of you are going to be doing, is just doing a really simple video keyframe animation based on opacity. If you do want to go and do more complex things with transformations and stuff, you can do that, but just as a heads up, it'll be a lot easier if it's just based on opacity, because there's a really simple keyframe that is specific to opacity. Now, the problem in my file, and this may happen to you too, and problem in my file is, you know, sometimes with Photoshop, I'm not very careful always about making sure that I'm adjusting opacity versus fill. And for some things, fill does matter, but for a lot of what I'm using, fill really doesn't matter, and it's not really that much different than opacity for what my purposes are. And so the thing is that the keyframes will only work for opacity if you're using opacity keyframes. If you're not using opacity keyframes and you want to capture the fill, you have to do something a lot more complicated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of go backwards, and I'm going to change in my file anything that was a fill, and I'm going to make sure that it's really the opacity that's adjusted. Okay, and this is my original one, and so it doesn't really matter if it's 96 or 100 or whatever, but I don't have to adjust that one. This one, however, I do have to adjust because I've got almost 100% opacity, 96%, but my fill is only 46%. So really that ends up being about 100. If you base it off of 100, it ends up being about 50% opacity, and then 100% of the fill. So I would have to go back and do something like this, and you'll notice that it really doesn't look any different down here. Okay, and the reason I'm doing this is that I have to do this before I make my layer comps, because if I make my layer comps based off of the opacity fill, that's what it's going to remember, and I won't be able to just toggle back and forth. And no matter what, I have to change this before I do my animations. So let's look at the opacity for this one. So this one I just need to reverse them, and this should be 48. And again, it looks the same. And this one, again, this math is a little bit different, but if you want to think about it, you've got basically 57% of 21%. So that's somewhere around, let's give or take, like, say it's maybe 11% opacity, and we'll see how it looks. It's about right. And we'll come back to this one. Okay. Well, half of 50 is 25%. So if you did this, part of why I'm showing you this is because I know that some of you are going to do this. And so I'm kind of helping you think a little bit about how you can think about these numbers too when you have to go back and modify them. Okay, so let's go up here and see, everything's backwards. And it's a bad habit to just grab the fill instead of opacity when you're not paying attention. Okay, I'm going to go fix the rest of these. Okay, and ironically, all the rest of them were actually correctly done with opacity. Okay, so let's go ahead and make the layer comps. So I'm going to turn on my riverbed 2, and then just to double check, they're both enabled there. And now I can actually create my correct riverbed. And I'll just call that riverbed bottom. Okay, and then I can go do my number 3, and so forth and so on. And I'm not going to make you watch me type all of these. Okay, I'll do that real quick. Okay, so we've done that. Now the next thing that I want to talk about, or I want to address, is that before we go any further with doing our timeline stuff, one of the things that, if you haven't already done it, you should do is you need to duplicate the file that you're working with. If you go up here to look at the image size, you'll see that my image size is gigantic, and this would be something that could be appropriate for like a print resolution. So if I were to take off resample, for instance, and I wanted to see how big this could be at 300 ppi, that could be an 8.5 by, or excuse me, an 8 by 10 print, which is, you know, something that's about letter size on paper. So that's not a bad resolution. Well, the problem though is that, let's go back to 72 ppi. The problem though is that we're doing something for video and it's not for print. And you know, for the sake of two different things. One, for the sake of video being more efficient, it doesn't have to be, you know, 2,500 pixels wide. That's just unnecessary. That's the size of resolution on, say, a 27-inch monitor. But before I even change the file dimensions, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here and I'm going to say File, Save As. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this thing to be City and Decay 720 tall dash video. And the reason I'm doing 720 tall is because this is in fact a vertical image. And while something that is a horizontal landscape type of image is probably more desirable because you're going to be able to get more visual information in there, this just so happens to be the composition that we made. And this assignment is not just about video, it's really about making images. And so, you know, there are plenty of reasons to have a vertical painting, right, instead of a horizontal one. So what's going to happen is that it's going to frame it in a horizontal frame, and it's just going to have black on the sides, and that's okay. That's really the only choice that we have, because that's just videos just are not vertical. And there are some basic standard resolutions, and the one that we're going to go for is it's 1080 by 720. So it's 1080 by 720, and it's referred to as 720p or 720 pixels for the verticality of it, and that's the height. So what I'm going to do is go up to Image. Now that I've already saved as a new version, okay, this is really important. Anytime I'm duplicating something and reducing the file size or making major modifications, I save the version as something else before I start making changes, because if you start making changes, you might accidentally hit save and then you've written over all of your other stuff. So anyway, go back up here to image size, and with the constraint chosen, okay, we're going to change the height. I'm going to change the height. If yours is wide, then you're going to change the width. So I'm going to change mine to 720, and you would change yours to 1080. Or if you want to make it even smaller, because maybe you think it's going to look better, you can make it 640. That's as small as I want you to make it, is 640. So somewhere between 640 and 1080 is acceptable.